Perry Mason, private investigator.
Hey all, everyone's quarantine rooms, top notch, room rater ratings. I don't know. I think Matthew, I give you I want to say like an 8 out of 10.
This is a virtual background. This isn't real.
So I think a lot of people's reaction when they heard Perry Mason was being reworked, reimagined was why? So Matthew, what was your reaction when you were
That was my initial reaction. That was the word I used. Why? There are different camps. There are those slightly older generations who know the show very well, love Raymond Burr and go, you're not Raymond Burr. And then there's kind of my generation. The show was enormous, but you have no real memory of it. It was always something older generations were watching, certainly in my case. I was interested as to what the reimagining would be, because when I heard HBO were going to make Perry Mason, you know it wasn't going to be my grandparents' HBO.
We do what we don't like when there's a greater good to be served. You more than anyone should know that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know Perry Mason at all. I'd never heard of it. My dad was very excited because I think he loved the theme song, is what he said. In reading the script, it felt contemporary as much as it is a period piece and as much as it is a reimagining of a prior series.
It's kind of like big-knuckle, black and white noir crime drama from the 1930s with this incredible modern take to it. It's very fast moving, it's very clever and witty and kind of edgy and savage. And it's crammed full of fascinating characters, not just the familiar characters from the 1950s, but all these inventions by these amazing writers. One of those characters is E.B. Jonathan, my character. Total invention.
You took evidence from a crime scene. You can lose your license for this. It gets our client off.
Speaking of compelling characters, I mean, I would like to admit I am a lifelong member of the Clone Club. Huge. And I was getting major Elena vibes.
Oh,
with,
yeah.
Sister Alice. You look good as a blonde, I have
Thanks.
to say. What is it about Sister Alice that drew you specifically? What is it about those kinds of characters?
I find people who have that kind of faith or that kind of certainty to be so interesting, because there's obviously deep doubt and something underneath that they're having to defend against.
Blessed be the man who will snap this devil's neck.
I love the idea of a very public persona and then the truth of what's going on underneath. And she embodies that in such a massive way that I was just really excited by.
Matthew, this version of Perry, I mean, I think you can kind of just feel the weight of what he's carrying emotionally, guilt. It's so complicated, and how that guides his own moral compass. What was it like playing with that with him?
Yeah, you just hit all the nails, really. That, he...
I teach you up, man.
There's nothing I can really add to that. I wore a fedora and a leather jacket. That was right. No, you're right. When we meet him, there's an inordinate amount on his plate. His sense of justice is born of this incident that he's experienced in the First World War that's incredibly complicated. He feels a great injustice has happened to him in this incredibly complex moment. So there's an incredibly troubled man beneath the fedora when we first meet him, and a far cry certainly from the defense attorney I think a number of people know and love.
Mr. Mason, certain matters require discretion and finesse. That's the kind of thing you're good at. Wear your good suit.
This is my good suit.
I think when a lot of people heard that Perry Mason was being remade, the reaction was, why? So I'm curious what your reactions were when you heard this.
I don't think I had a reaction when I heard it was being made that was separate of it being something I was being considered for. So I luckily had a script. So I understood why when I read the script, because they're telling an honest version of what was never real. I mean, it's a great show, but was it telling a truth? Not really. It was just kind of a whitewashed version of 1930s LA. And when I read this script, it was very much not that. And it has a much higher element of danger, intrigue, and interest for me.
And I think that understanding that it was going to be approached long form, 8 hours for one crime allows for real in-depth character exploration and looking at different honest, diverse parts of what Los Angeles was in that time.
I'm not going to lie. I was like, Tim, why do you want to touch this? And then Tim said, he had to weigh in and he really wanted to try to recreate the 30s in Los Angeles. He thought that there were a lot of parts that hadn't been filmed really of Los Angeles. And then once we started really talking about it, I got extraordinarily excited.
You said just about out of moves. So what's the move?
When Perry first came to us at Team Downey, it was like 10 years ago. And the idea was, let's reinvent Perry. Let's bring him to a modern audience and let's do it set in present day. And Robert specifically said, I want to tell the story in 1930s Los Angeles. I think it will be truer to the source material. And it's such an incredible time in our history that hasn't really been represented on film or television recently.
It's surprising to see that anyone gives any concern about showing any representation of any race other than white people pre-1950. So that alone is exciting, to be a part of something that not only wants to tell it, but wants to investigate it. And so I feel like getting an opportunity to play a cop in the 1930s, one, allowed me to inform myself on when there was a first officer of note in LA, which is way before we think, because I'm not used to knowing anything about this time, because I don't feel like any person of color was really represented in a way that they would say was honorable on TV and film back then. So it's really nice to be a part of something that wants to have the conversations that, even though it's a period piece, we're having them today. We're having these conversations right now. They're happening on the streets as we speak. And we got to be a part of the 1930s version of that.
Blessed be the man who will gather evidence against the devil.
You're saying the police are involved? The cops, the church, everybody.